Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'm Jessica Matthews, President of the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, and it's a great pleasure to welcome you here today. For more than 60 years, the alliance between Washington and Tokyo has been a central pillar of American foreign policy. With the rebalance to Asia, the partnership between our two countries has taken on still greater significance, and appropriately so. In addition to being strong security partners, Japan and the United States share the distinction of being two of the world's largest and most innovative economies. We both invest enormous sums in research and development and in educating students in science, technology, engineering, and math. For both our countries, lagging economic growth is a problem, and close cooperation between us in science and technology becomes even more vital for that reason. Since its establishment some 25 years ago, the U.S. Japan Science and Technology Joint High-Level Committee has been an important vehicle for bilateral coordination on a range of issues, from nuclear energy to green technology to science and engineering education. It gives me great pleasure, therefore, as a fallen-away scientist who began life as a molecular biologist, to welcome some of the key members of that dialogue here to Carnegie this afternoon for a closer look at the future of U.S. Japan scientific cooperation and its potential to spur economic growth on both sides of the Pacific. We're very honored to have with us today three of the leaders of that dialogue. We're going to start our conversation with my good friend, Dr. John Holdren, the President's Science Advisor and head of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy. We'll then hear from Japanese Minister Hiroshi Shimomura, Japan's Minister of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology, and Minister Ishita Yamamoto, the Minister of State for Science and Technology Policy. After their remarks, the head of Carnegie's Japan program, Jim Shoaf, is going to lead a distinguished panel of Japanese and American scholars discussing and exploring these issues further. So I don't want to take any more of your time, but I want to simply thank you all for joining us for this important conversation and turn the podium over to John Holdren.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and good afternoon, everybody. It's terrific to be here and to be joined by Minister Shimomura and Yamamoto and so many other distinguished colleagues from Japan. As Jessica has already noted, we on the Japanese side and on the U.S. side met earlier today under the auspices of the Joint High-Level Committee on Science and Technology Cooperation between Japan and the United States. That was created under the now 25-year-old U.S. Japan Science and Technology Agreement. That's one of the oldest science and technology-oriented international agreements to which the United States is a party. It has catalyzed enormous progress in science and technology cooperation between our two countries. And in fact, the discussions that we had this morning were wide-ranging, they were rich, they were deep in content, and yielded many interesting ideas about how to build this strong cooperation even further going forward. We certainly know from experience that governments play many important roles and can accomplish many important things, including in the science and technology and innovation domains. But we also know that in many cases, even greater things can be accomplished when governments work together in common purpose, and greater still if they can manage to do that in ways that engage as well the private sector and the philanthropic sector in partnerships of various kinds. I want to focus my remarks this afternoon on that world of public-private partnerships and, in particular, what the Obama administration has been doing to nurture that particular domain. The Obama administration has been a supporter of the use of public-private partnerships from the very first days of the president's first term. I know many of you have heard the president say on a number of occasions that we need an all-hands-on-deck approach to the challenges we face, challenges in economic recovery, in health care, in energy and climate change, in national and homeland security. And when he's talked about all hands on deck, he's actually been referring to many kinds of partnerships. He's been referring to the need for cooperation between the executive branch and the Congress. That's been a tough one, as we all know. He's referring to partnerships, of course, among nations, and we're here today in substantial part because of the strong partnership between the United States and Japan, focusing on science, technology, and innovation, as well as partnerships between these two nations in so many other respects. And again, the kind of partnership that the president has been particularly energetic in promoting, in addition to the international ones, is the partnerships with the private sector in fomenting innovation, research, development, the translation of research and development into practical innovations serving society, and also partnerships in the domain of science, technology, engineering, and math education, STEM education. I want to provide a few examples from that domain this afternoon. On his first full day in office, the president signed an executive memorandum on open government, which called for a new era of transparency and collaboration among government, businesses, and citizens. And one outgrowth of that declaration has been something that's come to be called the Open Data Initiative, which basically calls for a new default setting in government in which data generated with taxpayer money gets made available as freely as possible and in as readily usable a form as possible, so that citizens and businesses, of course taking into account privacy and national security issues, can use those data to generate and fuel entrepreneurship, innovation, scientific discovery, and a wide range of public benefits. One can think back to the late 1970s when the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration made government weather data available for the first time. That decision gave rise to an entire economy around weather data. The Weather Channel, improved insurance programs, agricultural planning tools, and much more. I always have to reflect that a few years ago a member of Congress said, "I don't understand why we need weather satellites and the National Weather Service. We've got the Weather Channel." That was a fundamental misunderstanding about cause and effect in this domain. But similarly, in the 1980s, the federal government opened up access to data from Global Positioning System satellites, GPS satellites, which had previously been reserved for the military. And that gave rise to an economic sector that today is valued at more than $90 billion annually in the United States alone, generating obviously new businesses and a variety of high-tech jobs. So obviously one approach to public-private collaboration simply involves releasing government-created or supported information to spur innovation and economic growth, and we're doing that on a large scale. We have released in this administration already, as hard as this is to believe, hundreds of thousands of data sets that never before were available, and they've been released in open machine-readable formats. A second creative approach to attracting private sector ingenuity has been our focus on incentive prizes. Those kinds of prizes have a number of advantages over the conventional means of enticing private entities to solve problems, which have been government grants and contracts. Grant and contract recipients receive government funding in return for a promise to do their best to fill a stated need. Prizes are conferred only on those who actually succeed in filling the need. And they also typically attract a wider than usual range of talent to take aim at a problem. They often result in investments in excess of the prize purse itself. The Automotive X Prize a few years ago was funded with $10 million in prizes from the private sector. $100 million was invested by the contestants, producing automobiles that got more than 100 miles per gallon of gasoline equivalent. So there was a 10-to-1 leverage beyond what the prize provided. In fact, we are now in a situation where 45 different federal departments and agencies have offered more than 250 prizes over the past few years, resulting in winning solutions that have included, as I already mentioned, fuel-efficient cars, methods for blocking illegal robocalls, wearable air pollution and health sensors, and health IT applications that help citizens make the most of their personal health data. Now, as a third example in the domain of public-private partnerships, I want to talk a bit about these partnerships in furtherance of education and training. Central to that effort has been the President's Educate to Innovate initiative, which he announced initially in November of 2009. That initiative has spurred corporations, philanthropies, and nonprofits to contribute more than $750 million, over $750 million, in donations and in-kind services to beef up resources available in the STEM fields in our nation's classrooms and to support science and engineering teachers. That approach reaches beyond the classroom to include vocational training as well. Just yesterday, the First Lady announced at a White House event a new public-private partnership through which companies such as Cisco, in conjunction with licensing and credentialing organizations, are going to provide to thousands of military service members the training and testing they need in order to earn various professional credentials related to information technology, credentials that will help these service members find jobs in the burgeoning IT field as soon as they leave the military and enter the civilian job market. Finally, I'll note one other program we've initiated that provides a quite novel means of making the best use of public and private sector expertise, and that is the Presidential Innovation Fellows Program that was launched by the U.S. Chief Technology Officer Todd Park, who is based in my office in the White House. That program brings private sector innovators into government for limited time stints, typically 6 to 12 months, to team up with government innovators to tackle very specific problems and get tangible results before they go back after doing this service to their day jobs. They bring with them their lean startup mentality and experience, which they share with their public sector co-workers who have complementary skills in policy making and deep knowledge about how government works. The first class of these fellows is just finishing up its run, and it has achieved an amazing record of success, including revamping the way the government collects and releases data, simplifying the process by which small tech companies can apply for government grants, improving veterans' access to medical records, and making energy use data more available to consumers so that they can save energy and reduce their energy bills. So I hope this gives you some sense of the array of creative mechanisms that we've been using in the Obama administration to combine the talents and the resources of the public and private sectors in order to stay at the top of our game in science, technology, and innovation. I thank you for your attention. I'm very happy now to turn the microphone over to my Japanese colleagues to learn from their experiences in this domain. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Holdren. My name is Jim Shoaf. I'm a senior associate here at the Carnegie Endowment. And as Dr. Holdren touched on, we all know the importance of education for successful science and technology development, and we are fortunate to have Japan's Minister for Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology. It's my pleasure to introduce the Honorable Shimomura Hakubun.
My name is Hakubun Shimomura. I'm honored to have this opportunity today. Now I speak Japanese slowly. 今日、日米合同科学技術協力委員会に共同議長として参加するとともに、このオープンフォーラムの場で学会、産業界のリーダーの皆様、そして本日ご出席の著名な皆様方を前に挨拶の機会いただきましたことを光栄に思います。
I am honored to have this opportunity today to speak before this gathering of eminent science and industry leaders and other distinguished guests, as well as to co-chair the meeting of the U.S. Japan Science and Technology Joint High-Level Committee.
安倍政権にとって最も重要な外交の基軸は日米の同盟関係です。私の基本的な考え方を述べますと、日米関係の強化のためには防衛協力や経済協力に加えて科学技術分野において学会、産業界と連携して多層的な協力を強化し、科学技術を発展させることが非常に重要であるというふうに考えます。また、国の未来を担い、両国の交流の礎となる人材を育成することが不可欠であることは言うまでもありません。
For the Abe administration, the Japan-U.S. alliance is the cornerstone of Japan's diplomacy. I believe strengthening our bilateral ties requires that we advance science and technology. In addition to cooperation in the areas of defense and the economy, we must build up multi-tiered cooperation in the fields of science and technology through partnerships among our academic and industry leaders. Needless to say, it is also crucial that we develop human resources that will lead our nations into the future and spearhead bilateral exchange.
安倍政権が誕生して4ヶ月余りでありますが、今、株価は150%、国民の期待は大変に大きなものがあります。3本の矢、一つは積極的な金融政策、そして2つ目に大胆な財政政策、そして3つ目には民間活力を使った成長経済戦略を考えております。
The Abe administration has been in power for only 4 months now, and we've seen the stock market go up 150%. This reflects the expectations that the population has for the new administration. The Abe administration has adopted a three-pronged approach. One is in regard to financial policy. There is also bold new economic policies. And finally, utilization of the vitality of the private sector to help stimulate economic growth is another strategy.
とりあえず市場はこの経済政策と財政政策を評価をしておりますが、本当の経済再生ができるかどうかは、これから科学イノベーションを活用した民間の成長戦略をどう国家戦略としてバックアップできるかどうかということが問われていると思いますし、同時にそれを支える人材養成がこれから安倍政権の大きな課題でもあると思います。
For the Abe administration, economic rebirth is a big priority, but there's a question of how the growth strategies will contribute to making this a reality. This depends on science and technology initiatives as well as the cooperation of the private sector. So we need to adopt this growth strategy as our national strategy and also to cultivate these human resources.
人材育成とはまさにグローバル人材の育成であり、そのためにはこれからアメリカとの関係の中でさらに積極的なウィンウィンの関係を作っていくことに努力をするということが日本だけでなくアメリカにとっても必ずプラスになる方向性になるというふうに思い、今日はこちらの方に参りました。
In terms of this cultivation of human resources, we're living in a global world. This also involves our relationship with America and to create a positive win-win situation for both countries that would put us in a positive direction. And that's part of why I came here today.
さて、昨年12月に、内閣総理大臣となった安倍晋三総理の下で、我々は現在、東日本大震災からの復旧・復興・経済再生に向けた取り組みを加速させておりますが、この大震災は科学技術の領域にも大きな影響を及ぼしております。
As we all know, under Shinzo Abe, who assumed office as Prime Minister last December, Japan is accelerating measures to achieve reconstruction and economic rebirth after the Great East Japan earthquake. This enormous disaster has had a tremendous impact on the field of science and technology.
お手元のハンドアウトをご覧ください。一つ目のグラフは東日本大震災の前後における科学技術に対する意識調査の結果です。科学技術の発展により環境問題などの社会の新たな問題が解決されるという問いに対して、ご覧のように震災前と後で結果が大きく異なり、科学技術への期待が減少しているという結果を示しています。言うなれば、これは科学技術の発展のみで様々な社会問題を解決するには 限界があるということを認識する人が増えてきたことを示しているのではないでしょうか。
Please look at the graph in the handout. The first graph shows the results of public awareness surveys on science and technology conducted in various years before and after the Great East Japan earthquake. In the surveys, respondents were asked whether they thought environmental issues and other new problems facing society would be able to be resolved through the advancement of science and technology. As you can see, the survey's results differ greatly before and after the disaster. This graph shows that Japanese people's expectations for science and technology are declining. I believe this graph indicates an increase in Japanese society's awareness that there are limits to how much the advancement of science and technology alone can solve social problems.
ところが2つ目のグラフをご覧になっていただきたいと思います。科学技術が今後貢献すべきと思う分野はどこかという問いに対して、このように震災後大幅に増加している項目もあります。
Now please look at the second graph, which compares fields in which Japanese expect science and technology to contribute. As you can see, expectations have substantially increased in some areas since the disaster.
全体に見れば科学技術への期待が下がり、個別で見れば期待されている。これはどういうことでしょうか。私はこのたった2つのグラフからも、今、時代の変わり目、価値観の変わり目、すなわちパラダイムシフトの真っ只中にいるということが非常によくわかると考えます。
Expectations for science and technology have declined overall, yet expectations are high in individual areas. What does this mean? I think it is clear that the times and people's values are changing. In other words, we are in the middle of a paradigm shift.
なお、これは決して我が国だけの問題ではないことは皆さんよくご承知だというふうに思います。今、全人類が時代の変わり目にいることを否定する人はこの中でどなたもおられないでしょう。
I'm sure that you all agree that this is not something that is confronting Japan alone. Is there anyone in the room who would deny this?
当たり前ですが、全人類に訪れるこれからの時代は、この世の誰一人としてまだ見たことはありません。
Obviously, a new era is coming that no one alive today has ever seen before.
だからこそ今、国を越えて議論する必要があると思います。新しい時代に向けて科学技術はどう貢献できるか、どうあるべきか、どうありたいか。我が国でも科学技術イノベーションは安倍内閣が掲げる成長戦略の重要な柱に備えられており、日本経済再生の原動力として期待されています。現在、イノベートジャパンの掛け声の下で文部科学省が投資して、これまで得られなかった素晴らしい研究成果をイノベーションにつなげていけるよう全力を尽くしています。
That is precisely why we must engage now in debate that transcends national boundaries and discuss how science and technology can contribute to society, what role science and technology should play, and what we want from them as we look toward the new era. Science, technology, and innovation have been designated as key pillars in the Abe Cabinet's growth strategy, and they are expected to help drive Japan's economic rebirth. Under the catchphrase, Innovate Japan, the nation is doing everything in its power to transform into actual innovation the outstanding research results achieved to date through investment by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science, and Technology.
例えば最近では iPS 細胞の研究で2012年にノーベル賞を受賞された京都大学の山中教授らの研究に10年間で1100億円を重点投資し、iPS 細胞研究を加速化させることを決めました。10年間の長期投資はこれまで日本政府ではなかったことであります。
For example, we recently decided to invest $1.1 billion over the next 10 years to accelerate iPS cell research led by Professor Yamanaka of Kyoto University, who won the Nobel Prize last year. This is the first time for the Japanese government to provide funding lasting 10 years.
イノベートジャパン&アメリカを目指してこの会場にお集まりの科学界と産業界のリーダーの方々にはぜひ活発にご議論いただき、日米両国の将来に向けた示唆をいただけることを期待しています。
I hope that the science and industry leaders gathered for the meeting today will engage in dynamic discussion and come up with suggestions for our common future.
最後になりますが、この新しい意欲的なイベントの実現にご尽力されたカーネギー国際平和財団、米国国務省をはじめ関係の方々に深く感謝を表しまして、私の挨拶といたします。
In closing, I would like to express my deep appreciation to everyone at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, the U.S. Department of State, and all others involved for their efforts to realize this new and ambitious event.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shimomura-sensei. We are also honored to have Minister Yamamoto with us today. He wears many hats in the cabinet. He serves concurrently as Minister of State for Okinawa and Northern Territory Affairs, Minister of State for Space Policy, Minister in charge of Information Technology Policy, and Minister in charge of Ocean Policy and Territorial Issues. He is also, I believe, a Georgetown Hoya fan, based on his time here in town. Today he will speak to us primarily as Japanese Minister of State for Science and Technology Policy. It is my pleasure to introduce Yamamoto-sensei.
Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am Ichita Yamamoto, Minister of State for Science and Technology Policy of Japan. I am also in charge of Okinawa and Northern Territories Affairs, Space Policy, Information Technology Policy, Ocean Policy and Territorial Issues, and Intellectual Property Strategy, and so forth. I'm called a minister that has 7 faces. Today, I'm very much honored and delighted to be able to participate in this JHLC Open Forum. I understand that this Open Forum is co-hosted with Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, with speakers from the private sector and academia of both countries. And the focus is on the topic, science and technology to promote economic growth. The greatest mission of the Abe administration is the restoration of the robust economy. We are shooting 3 arrows, prongs, to realize this, as Minister Shimomura mentioned, namely bold monetary policy, flexible fiscal policy, and a growth strategy which encourages private sector investment. Science, technology, and innovation has a lot to contribute to formulating this growth strategy. As I said in the morning session, I firmly believe that by swiftly and steadily implementing those measures under the strong leadership of Prime Minister Abe, Japan will be back. In order to accelerate the creation of innovation, which leads to the economic growth, we need all-out policies and efforts, gaining participation of various players from industry, academia, and the government, while eliminating the silo effects. Today's Open Forum is very meaningful, both for its timely theme setting and for its composition of discussants. In today's morning session of the JHLC, we had active discussion on how we can enhance collaboration. I understand that we came to share the common perception about the need of having all the players together. I believe that STI, science, technology, and innovation, is a key to determining the future of Japan and is also the final trump card to overcome the problems we face. I believe this is also true to the United States. Needless to say, Japan and the United States have had the most important relationship in science and technology. I believe what is now needed is to enhance the collaboration aiming at boosting the economy in national and global context. In pursuing our further collaboration, we should consider involving emerging countries, especially those in Asia. Such collaboration can not only contribute to addressing the challenges confronting the country, but also lead to the economic growth. I will be participating in the following discussions from the floor as part of the audience. I look forward to the active discussion. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Yamamoto-sensei. So that concludes our opening remarks and opening session. I'd like to ask our panelists to come up to the front table, and we will begin our panel discussion. So this is what you call an embarrassment of riches in terms of excellent people participating in our event. Oh, I need a little bit extra space. Thank you. This is about the maximum we can handle here. Thank you. Welcome to the panel discussion portion of our program. We will have a bit of a discussion up here on stage, but then I'd like to encourage audience involvement too by the end of our program. We are truly fortunate to have an outstanding group of professionals with us today to explore the topic that the ministers and Dr. Holdren introduced. And I will introduce them in just a minute. Very briefly, I just wanted to open a couple of framing remarks because I think the atmosphere of this event is quite different than probably the way it began 25 years ago when the Joint Committee started. I am what you would call a Japan hand or an alliance manager, and as such we spend a lot of time focused on security issues and political and economic trade issues. Regional security and economic growth are usually viewed through the prism of the U.S. Japan Security Treaty, U.S. forward presence, joint exercises, trade negotiations, and coordinating monetary policy. We often overlook other important and perhaps even more promising aspects of our bilateral relationship. Over the years, the United States and Japan have tried to raise the profile of broader alliance cooperation in the 1990s, for example, with initiatives like the Global Partnership or the Common Agenda to address a variety of international challenges, poverty, disease, and environmental degradation. And they achieved some notable successes, but high-level leadership was relatively inconsistent. And as they were developed in an era of pretty intense competition. In fact, these initiatives, the Global Partnership and Common Agenda, were essentially the flip side of bilateral trade negotiations designed to help open up the Japanese market. The negotiation over the U.S. Japan Science and Technology Agreement that established the Joint High-Level Committee itself dragged on for several years due to conflict over who might get more advantage than the other out of this agreement, until it was finally signed in 1988. Today, I think, in contrast, we are in the early stages of a very new kind of bilateral relationship, marked by much greater cooperation in a wide range of areas, given our common interests and our common values and the talents that we bring. There's still competition, of course, but I think there is great potential for the alliance in this respect, and we have a wonderful group of panelists to help us explore different aspects of that dynamic. So among your handouts today, we have bios for our panelists, but just to orient you, on my far left here we have Dr. Hidetoshi Kotera, Executive Vice President for External Strategy, Knowledge and Technology Transfer and Innovation from Kyoto University, Dr. Keith Yamamoto, Vice Chancellor for Research at the University of California, San Francisco, and Executive Vice Dean, School of Medicine, Dr. Michiharu Nakamura, the President of the Japan Science and Technology Agency, Dr. Charles Vest, President of Japan Science and Technology. No, not the President of Science. Please, yeah.
Promoted.
He's gunning for your job. Sorry, the President of the National Academy of Engineering and President Emeritus of MIT, Mr. Mitsuhiko Yamashita. Oh, on the end, I'm sorry. Member of the Board and Executive Vice President, Nissan Motor Company, and Dr. Keiji Kojima, Vice President and Executive Officer for Hitachi Limited and General Manager, Hitachi Research Laboratory. So now that you have met everyone, I would like to begin by opening with a couple of questions to our individual panelists. And Dr. Nakamura, I'd like to start with you. The Japan Science and Technology Agency is a major funding agency equivalent to NIH in some respects, or the National Science Foundation in the United States. And I believe your agency's activities are based on the policies of the Japanese government, and we just heard about Abenomics and the initiatives of the government in this area. Would you share with us your basic approach as leader of that agency in the context of these policies?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Shoaf. First, I'd like to express my deep appreciation to Department of State and Carnegie Endowment for International Peace for hosting this forum. It's happy to see that new Prime Minister Abe has been making first great success improving the economy by pushing for a drastic easing of monetary policy aimed at stopping economic deflation. As a next step, Mr. Abe recently unveiled his idea of growth strategy that included the enhancement of challenging spirit, openness, and science and technology innovation to awaken Japan's sleeping opportunities to regain true competitiveness. As you may recall, during the last decade, a number of discussions were made on the role of science and science systems, as well as societal trust and credibility for science in the 21st century. Today, academia is deeply involved to tackle global issues and enhance local competitiveness. Science in the society, science for the society has been a core concept shared since the World Science Council meeting held in Budapest in 1999. It's time for us to push a new role of science in such a way to meet wishes or needs of a future society. We think that industry is a leader of innovation. What should government or academic institutions do to help industry lead innovation? There are many ways, such as tax reduction, public grants, deregulation, and academia-industry collaboration. Japanese industry leaders consistently claim, however, that government should further support basic research in academia, since fundamental innovation takes place utilizing game-changing technology or deep knowledge created through basic science. However, under the financial pressure, that is, under financial pressure, there is a strong trend for academia to shift to short-term R&D instead of long-term R&D. Therefore, we have to rethink the science system in such a way to expand science network worldwide to share the cost of basic research, as well as increasing budget itself. New measures to increase global collaboration is highly required. Another point in science transformation is to reestablish social trust and credibility for science. It's particularly important in Japan after March 2011. We can refer to many examples of science and technology-based innovations that originated from academic achievements in energy, environment, biomedicine, nanotechnology, and others recently. One of the biggest STIs of this century may be regenerative medicine based on ES or IPS technology. It's an achievement in basic science, but it's going to open a new era in medicine, and we are very happy to collaborate in this area as well. However, major challenges still remain open, such as improving time to innovation, maximizing R&D performance, human capacity building, and science communications, in addition to further strengthen basic science. Let me introduce some of our efforts to work on them, focusing on our recent efforts on establishing new science and technology innovation platforms. WPI, World Premier International Research Center Initiative, was launched in Japan 6 years ago to advance fundamental science of any fields. They feature advancing leading-edge research, establishing international research environment to invite many foreign talents, and reforming research organizations. Tsukuba Innovation Arena, TIA, was established 3 years ago as a nanotechnology research consortium for under one roof academia-industry collaboration on nanotechnology and materials. It's one of the leading programs in Tsukuba International Strategic Special Zone. Also, COI, Center of Innovation Program, is newly prepared by MEXT. It will feature a visionary practice of R&D, that is, by defining the vision based on the future wishes or needs. R&D agendas are backcasted and executed under one roof by academia industry consortium. Global collaboration will plan in vision making as well as R&D itself. The East Asia Innovative Area Joint Research Program, EASIA-JRP for short, is a new scheme launched last year among East Asia Summit member countries to collaborate for global issues like infectious diseases, climate changes, as well as local quality of life. It will also help us create reverse innovation originating from emerging countries. Participation of the U.S. as one of the leading countries is highly acknowledged. Japan and the U.S. share global issues such as aging society, natural resources, security, resilience of society, etc. We two leading countries in science and technology innovation have to work together to discuss the clear vision for solving global issues and to collaboratively do R&D, not only for us, but also for the sustainability of the society. In addition to ongoing joint programs, JST and NIH have recently signed the MOU to go a step further to expand our collaboration in the field of biomedical medicine. Also this morning, a new joint initiative for utilizing big data in disaster prevention was discussed and endorsed. Finally, I'd like to propose to establish a joint science technology innovation strategy panel between Japan and the U.S. to discuss future vision of sustainable society and the necessary agendas with participation from government, industry, and academia and other stakeholders. These are what I have been thinking after my last appointment as a president of JST. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nakamura-sensei. That's very interesting. There's obviously going to be a lot today through the various discussions to address. We won't be able to get to all the points, but I hope that today is a way of stimulating thinking about a wide range of innovations and proposals. Let me turn to Dr. Vest. Chuck, similar to Nakamura-sensei, you have experience in both private sector and in the academic sector, and I wonder, from your perspective, looking at the U.S. attempts to stimulate and promote science and technology innovation, what has worked, what hasn't, in terms of stimulating economic growth and what the future looks like to you.
Thank you very much, Jim. And let me begin by saying that since 1990, I've had the pleasure of having many enjoyable and intellectually and otherwise productive interactions with various universities, corporations, and agencies in Japan. So it's a particular pleasure for me to take part in this today. First of all, I want to say very clearly that in my view, there is one thing that is absolutely central to the U.S. models for innovation and economic development, and that is federally funded research conducted in our universities. It's the sine qua non. If we didn't have it, this would be a different nation and a different world. I like to think of our universities as producing opportunity as our product, if you will, through education, through research, and through the transfer of people and ideas. Obviously, with education, we create opportunities for our graduates to be productive citizens, to understand the life of the mind, to be prepared for jobs. Our research, in particular, helps to move forward business and industry by providing educated employees, new ideas, new products and services even. And finally, the most important in some ways, through the flow of both people and ideas, we create opportunity for states, regions, and nations to build their economy, to improve their quality of life. Now, just in case anybody wants to challenge the fundamental idea that federally sponsored research in universities is important, I carry around a little list of 6 things that came out of that system: computing, lasers, the internet, numerically controlled machines for manufacturing, the fundamentals of the GPS, or Global Positioning Satellite System, the genomic revolution, the deployment of the World Wide Web, and most of modern medicine. So this is big, important undertakings. Now let me cite 2 of what admittedly are the country's strongest examples of how this system has in turn built truly great universities. And not surprisingly, I'll pick MIT as one of them, and the other is Stanford. In 2012, a year ago, MIT, over its 150-year history, had become a world-class university. Its faculty and graduates have garnered 77 Nobel Prizes, and we can trace the origins of 25,800 existing companies to MIT over that 150 years. Similarly, Stanford, a somewhat younger institution, in 2012 had become, of course, a great world-class university. It has spawned 54 Nobel laureates, and in recent years, they do their calculation a little differently. In recent years, has been responsible for creating 6,000 companies. Some of them, of course, very large and impacting our economy. MIT was a major driving force in the development of what we call Route 128, all the sort of high-tech companies around the Boston area, and now the biotech clusters and medical instrumentation clusters around Cambridge and so forth, and Stanford, of course, a major driving force of Silicon Valley. So I leave you with the first lesson, or I'm not going to call it a lesson, I'm just going to call it a fact for you to think about. Nobody planned Route 128. Nobody planned Silicon Valley. No company did it, no government did it, no civic organization did it. Maybe that worked then, doesn't work now, but it's something to think about. Second area I'd like to mention very quickly is that since the end of World War II, due to the famous report in this country by Vannevar Bush, we followed for many decades a sort of sequential or linear model of how all this works. You start by doing basic research, largely, not entirely, but largely in our universities, and then certain kinds of good ideas come out, and we do applied research on them. And then finally, it moves into a company that does product development and ultimately markets new products or services. Today, this system is far more complicated. It's no longer this sort of linear, sequential operation. It's instead very highly nonlinear, and for those of you who picked up the little one-page handout, I tried to sort of diagram how three elements flow around among five sectors. The sectors being universities and research institutions, government, startup companies, major industries, and investors. And through all of these, people, ideas, and dollars flow in many different directions. So I'm not going to walk you through that, but I think if you just look at that, you will see here, and certainly in Japan as well, or any developed country, this system is much more complicated. The next thing I would like to mention is a few models which have been successful on a relatively large scale. They're all very different. Models for what? Models for moving the knowledge and new technologies from research into the economy. One is about 40 years plus old now, and it's Research Triangle Park in North Carolina, which was a very visionary, this time highly planned attempt by the state government in partnership with various industry elements to try to create a modern economy to replace the jobs that traditionally in that state had been provided largely by agriculture and by a wooden furniture industry that had grown up. And that was bringing together, sort of at the centroid between three great universities, one private, two public, Duke, North Carolina, and North Carolina State, drawing on those resources to attract research activities largely of existing companies, although there are some startups as well. And over those 4 decades, they have now created 40,000 jobs in the area. A very different kind of undertaking, which had no real plan in the normal sense, although frankly there was, toward the end of this, some very serious planning by the civic components of San Diego, and that's the whole wireless communication cluster that grew up in San Diego. It really started because of two people, Irwin Jacobs and Andrew Viterbi, who had some very fundamental ideas that they had developed on the East Coast as professors. And when I say fundamental, I mean lots of mathematics, things that could be written with a pencil and paper, and took that to develop a whole new approach to how we do communication by wireless modes. They moved from MIT west to the University of Southern California. They stepped out of the university to start a company called Linkabit. Linkabit grew very nicely. They took the money they had made from Linkabit, they connected it with even more advanced ideas and formed a company called Qualcomm. And that started really a change of the entire economy of that city. Then I will leave you with two other smaller scale programs, but ones that I find very interesting. One is the MIT Deshpande Center. Deshpande is the name of a very smart Indo-American entrepreneur in the Boston area. And this has a very simple idea. It takes the university. Deshpande personally gave us a $10 million initial gift to form a little endowment, a fund. And every year they accept one-page proposals from professors to say, here's an idea that I'm deeply interested in that I think has some economic potential, and they get a relatively modest amount of funding. They get a lot of coaching and interaction with venture capitalists and entrepreneurs from the private sector. And if a company is launched out of this and is successful, they're expected to pay back into the fund so that everything grows. And in 10 years, its first 10 years, starting just in one institution, they have funded 90 projects, and there are 26 active new companies that have been formed. A very different approach is the Stanford Technology Ventures Program, which I also think is extremely interesting, where two leaders from the Stanford community, Tim Byers and Tina Seelig, have basically made the whole university a staging point for understanding how high-tech-based entrepreneurship occurs, largely through education and very small projects at the undergraduate and graduate level, through scholarly research, and particularly through emphasis on solving real-world problems. And we don't have time to go into details. It's been very successful. My last 2 points, while I always emphasize, especially in our universities, the key importance of truly basic research, things that you don't know ultimate applications for, I think in the 21st century, we are going to be doing more and more what I like to call use-inspired basic research, or for those of you who are policy wonks, we call this Pasteur's quadrant after Louis Pasteur, which means you take a problem area where you believe there's an ultimate important application, but to get there, you have to really generate some new scientific and or technological knowledge. That, I think, is going to be the paradigm for more of our research than it has been in the past. And finally, just let me emphasize one of the points that was made in putting this panel together, and that's that in the modern world, countries like the U.S. and Japan or England and China or whatever, we are going to always be simultaneously competing with each other and cooperating with each other. I like to think of this as the yin and yang of the 21st century. Finding that balance is going to be really important, but I believe it all starts with sharing knowledge. At this point, I believe education and learning are actually leading the way in this rebalancing of competition and cooperation, but research is going to come along, and my sense is that taking on some of the grand challenges, especially things around sustainability, as Nakamura-san has already said, probably the best area to begin working together. Finally, I would say in that regard that my experience in many years, particularly in the university world, is that partnerships only work if the partners need each other. So we have to learn from each other's best practices, and we have to work in fields where, let's say, the Japanese partner has a talent, a background, a knowledge, a laboratory, whatever it is, that is different than the American partner brings to the table. Because if the working scientists and engineers on the ground level don't need each other, the partnership won't really work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chuck. That's terrific. I must say, part of the reason I got very interested in Japan studies and the U.S. Japan relationship from the very beginning was because I believe that there was great complementarity between our two countries. Our strengths were in some ways Japan's weaknesses and vice versa in terms of our cultures and our way of going about things. And so hopefully that synergy will continue. Let me turn over talking about synergy to Kotera Sensei from Kyoto University, one of the leading universities that works to reinforce collaboration with industries and academia. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the initiatives in that area in terms of enabling successful innovation?
Thank you. So my name is Hiroshi Kotera. So first of all, I want to say thank you for invitation for this panel. So I want to talk following the handout. Maybe you have the handout of my PowerPoint, but almost all things I want to talk here had been spoken by Dr. Best. So maybe some of my talk is so following his talk. So maybe please turn to the, please refer to the so second page. So recently the research area of the university is fragmented in the so small areas. I mean, originally the research area was categorized in the physical and chemical and philosophy and research. But recently, it's so categorized into so small areas. For example, my research area is mechanical engineering, but also my research field is microtests, and it's related to the regenerative medicine and molecules. So my research work is so small areas. At that time, when we produce some result, we would like to transfer our knowledge and technology to the industry. At that time, industry does not satisfied with our research areas because our research area is so small areas. And inside the universities, the number of the professors is limited in the universities. So there is so small number of the same categories. So I mean when we would like to collaborate with other professors, we should find out the professors to collaborate with him in foreign countries, and other universities. I mean, at the time we carried out our research work with many universities, and after that, when we would like to transfer our technology to the industries, so industries collaborate with many universities. It's a situation. So, and also to realize the innovations conventionally, only one seed technology opens the new areas. It's conventional areas. But recently, we would like to find some dream to realize we would like to find out some dream, and to realize some dream, so we should collaborate with many areas, not only in the material and device and system, and also the ethics and philosophy areas. And so at the time, we should collaborate with many fields and many countries and many industries. So recently, we are talking about that with many industries and universities, and we conclude that we should collaborate with the industry, university, and university industries. So, for example, inside Japan, we collaborate with domestic university and domestic industries. And also, our university would like to collaborate with other universities in foreign countries. At that time, foreign country university will collaborate with the domestic industry and other universities. Maybe we collaborate industry, university, industries all over the world. It's a new model in there. In our universities, maybe. So in future, collaboration between the field is very important under one roof. I think so.
Interesting. So I'm trying to sort out in my head a little bit the different strategies and different situations. You have obviously benefits of this kind of international cooperation for bringing new ideas or the synergy, what one has, what one doesn't have, but there's also this aspect of developing a critical mass in one particular area, because any one university or one company cannot have so many people working on that same small issue, but building these networks with other partners around the world is a way of generating that. Keith, Yamamoto, let me turn to you from kind of the American perspective, from the university role of promoting science and technology, and what you think our priorities should be going forward.
Thanks, Jim. Let me thank you and Carnegie Endowment for putting together this terrific panel. Very good discussion this afternoon. And I will echo in part some of the things that Chuck has said, as well as Dr. Kotera, and maybe divide my comments in terms of the U.S. contribution and on the academic side into three parts. Talk a bit about discovery, returning to that theme, and say a few words about what I'll just label as integration, and then finally training and education. And I think John Holdren introduced this. Chuck really underscored it beautifully, and that is that the home of fundamental discovery really is in the United States, at least in its universities, largely funded by the federal government. So that collaboration has been strong, originated in its present form after Vannevar Bush's report after World War II, and has continued and grown and prospered in spectacular ways. And it's appropriate that universities should be the home of fundamental discovery. Certainly one of the missions of universities is the discovery and development, nurturing of new knowledge, open intellectual inquiry on the part of its faculty and trainees is a key point in the existence and success of this sort of academic endeavor. And so it's appropriate that those fundamental questions be asked there. And it's also totally appropriate that those questions, that the support for being able to make those investigations come from public funds from the federal government. This was very clearly enunciated by Vannevar Bush. It's certainly been underscored by President Obama, who has pointed out directly that that ideas that are initiated without specific goals in mind can, in the end, be transformative, as he said, in a year, in a decade, or never. And it's because of that open-ended aspect of fundamental research that the private sector really can't support it, and that the public sector must. And President Obama made this point when he came to talk with the National Academies of Sciences 4 years ago in 2009, and his administration has been very supportive of that notion. So certainly one area where U.S. universities must play and lead is in this area of fundamental discovery. Now, what I mean by integration, and I really want to address the integration notion in three parts as well. One is integration of disciplines. We have reached a happy point in scientific research, scientific discovery, where the lights are coming on between different fields. And we can see how different subdisciplines within biology, where I work, and where where the physical sciences and the natural sciences, engineering, mathematics, can cross-feed each other in powerful ways. And that if we're going to move forward in this area of science and technology, it will require, in fact, that we are increasingly integrative in the way that we think about the sciences, and not be thinking of them as separate disciplines or separate subdisciplines of biology, but as a scientific endeavor that moves forward increasingly in an integrated way. The second form of integration that I want to talk about is in the stakeholder sectors, if you will. Again, something that Chuck mentioned, where it's very clear that the opportunities to move forward in science and technology have never been greater. But it's also clear that no institution, no sector, no stakeholder sector can do it alone. that it's going to require increasing and increasingly effective interfaces that be constructed between the various stakeholder groups. And here I would refer in large scale to academia, industry, the profits side of industry, the private nonprofits, and the government. So 4 big sectors that increasingly, if we are to succeed, we'll have to be doing so together. Universities really sit, in a sense, in the middle of that. We benefit from government support in primary ways, and the new knowledge that is discovered within our walls really must move out into the private sector, either the for-profit or nonprofit side, to be developed and applied. And so I think universities therefore should play a key role in being able to build that kind of integration between and among the sectors, so that research becomes not only transdisciplinary, where the fields merge, but that the various groups that are involved in carrying it out, in supporting it, in regulating it, are working together. And then the third level of integration that I'll address, I'll just call global. And that really makes the point that we heard just a few moments ago, and that is that the potential for science and technological research and advances to contribute to increasingly urgent societal issues and problems has again never been stronger. And it's very clear that those issues and problems are do not stop at national boundary lines, that they can only be successfully approached if they're approached as global problems and approached in cooperative ways. And certainly this committee and this conference represents a move in that direction. I work at the University of California in San Francisco, and I'll say that we're doing our bit because Shinji Yamanaka has a joint appointment at UCSF, and so we're telling him credit for his Nobel Prize. But we're very proud to have him associated with us as well as in Kyoto. And so this cross-disciplinary, cross-sector, cross-country, cross-national boundary level of integration is really increasingly important. And we're carrying out some programs at UCSF that maybe I can discuss in the open discussion a little bit that I think move in these directions in new and imaginative and hopefully successful ways. And I think that we all need to be thinking about innovative approaches to being able to build these forms of integration. And then I'll close with this notion of training and education. Again, it's clearly a primary mission of academic institutions, and certainly a primary goal of American universities. And I think that here we have challenges as well as opportunities, that this is the time that we need to be thinking about developing, fostering training programs, maybe of a different sort, that have that are really serving to enable both of the notions that I started with. Not only enable fundamental research, but a form of fundamental research that is truly transformative, that really promotes bold thinking, that rewards it, in fact. And there's some questions about how well effectively we're doing that in the United States, whether we're really enabling the kinds of boldness, of transformative thinking, recognizing and rewarding that sort of thinking. Can we develop training programs that really capitalize on the fact that I think everyone who goes into science does so with a little something in a little corner of her mind that says, I can do something amazing. I can discover something really, really important. If they walk in with those aspirations, what can we do better in our academic institutions to foster and promote those and maintain them and not squash them? I think that that's an interesting challenge. and certainly training in a more integrative way. There are programs that are growing up around the United States. We're trying to develop several that don't actually begin with high specialization in a given field, but begin with a much more integrated view. And something that industries have been asking us about for a long time, and that is, are there ways for us to develop training programs that have at the heart of them a team-based philosophy not only for doing work and for doing research, but for learning together. And we're finding that in some of our new educational paradigms and programs that we're building, this sort of team-based learning as well as team-based research is something that the students really bond together with, they really identify strongly with, and they find that they are empowered by the idea that they're working together with people who have different knowledge bases, who come in with different expertise, different even aspirations. But then when they find a common problem to work together on, they feel that there's really nothing they can't do because there's someone on the team that knows how to do what it is that they don't. And so we think that this will be enormously powerful and enabling. So these three areas where I think that where American universities can play large in the science and technology revolution that we are in and we should be looking forward to much greater advances in the future, fundamental discovery, integration, and training.
Oh, terrific. Thank you, Keith. That's a great way to frame it. Well, let's turn a little bit over to the industry side, since that's come up frequently in our discussion. Kojima-sensei, you were talking to me earlier about Hitachi's promotion of social innovation business, and I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that and how that fits into today's theme.
Okay, I'd like to address the question received using the simple print handout that I have prepared for this. And the first slide, actually, the image of the societal innovation, And today, the common goal of humanity is to achieve a sustainable society which provides human security and well-being for all its citizens. To do so, we need to realize societal innovation worldwide, and this will require the integration of specialist knowledge from multiple fields and the cooperation between all stakeholders. And the second slide shows what stakeholders should do in the process of the innovation. The stakeholders here can be divided into three large groups. The first is users, consumers, to judge user acceptance. And the next is governments to make reasonable policies. And the third is the scientists and engineers to provide the best technical solution. And to achieve societal innovation, though, coordination between the three stakeholders in very tight manner is imperative. The third slide shows my proposal here. To facilitate this kind of innovation process, societal innovation conductor type of person who has an experienced eye for technology and can establish business model and orchestrate between stakeholders, those type of person is necessary. And we'd like to propose discussions for frameworks on fostering such talented people through U.S. Japan collaboration. The following slides in your print introduce a few examples of what we are trying to do in realizing societal innovation. The first example shown in 4 slides is the Smart Grid demonstration project in Maui, which is supported by NIDO, which is a Japanese organization, and Hawaii government. The objective of the project is to establish a sustainable energy model on the island of Maui by U.S.-Japan collaboration. The main issue on the technology side will be to realize greater energy efficiency based on renewable energy and use of electrical vehicle as energy storage devices. But those new technologies alone is not enough. We need active participation of residents to realize smart communities, of course, and also policymakers' involvement is indispensable to implement new policies and regulations based on community need. The second example, slide 5, is regenerative medicine, which was referred by former speakers several times. And we are working on creating a supply chain in regenerative medicine business. And to make it, different sorts of technology breakthroughs are still required, I think. But these will also be governed by a wide range of policies and regulations. In order for the system to work, many user acceptance issues need to be resolved, including ethical or emotional aspects. The last example in slide 6 is preventive healthcare, which is a kind of big data application. The aim of this web-based weight loss support service is to improve the health of participants and lengthen their years of active participation in society. And importantly, as a result, we can reduce the burden on healthcare systems and insurance systems. And this service has already been implemented by several corporate health insurance providers in Japan. And also recently, Hitachi announced that it will be working with the national health system in the United Kingdom, NHS. Okay, so in summary, by resolving the various issues society faces through societal innovation, we can generate employment and realize sustainable growth. That's what I believe. To realize societal innovation, though, a societal innovation conductor type of person, a conductor, is very important, but the best way to foster such conductors is still an open issue. We'd like to address this question through U.S. Japan collaborations involving the 3 stakeholders groups as a possible framework for fostering such talent as well. Thank you very much for attention.
Thank you very much, Kojima-sensei. It's interesting, you can see as you move from the basic research, applied research, and into development, the role of the people, consumers, becomes a whole different factor to consider. Let's turn, certainly not least, to Yamashita-san from Nissan. And I wanted to ask you what your perspective is for the future of automotive innovation and which areas are potentially good candidates for private sector collaboration with government and academia.
Okay, let me try. Thank you for this invitation in the middle of the Golden Week in Japan. Actually, this is fun for me. I hope that you have this kind of a handout. Yours not the color, sorry, but let me go over with this one. But I'm not sure I can explain all of these. But when we look at GDP growth, each nation grows. Your travel distance proportionally grows. This is every country's data is saying that one. U.S. Japan or Western European area, they travel a lot because GDP is so big. But emerging countries still that people don't move so much. This fact support automotive is really necessity for our the future the growth. That's true. But when we look at our kind of some challenges, I don't want to say it's negative. But challenges, we still have a traffic accident or more, better energy saving or global warming or, congestion everywhere in the country. So those are probably obstacles we have to overcome. So in order to do overcome this one, we have some of the hint and the very summarize those kind of future innovation, the automotive is, I would say, one is electrification. Electrification is I will explain later, but it's more EV or HEV hybrid kind of vehicle, penetration in the market. Other one is I would say car intelligence. I'm not sure this is the right English or not, but in other words, this is probably smart car. Currently, we have some kind of high-end vehicles has a 50, 60 microcomputer within the car. Car is already somewhat smart, but we can extend more. Car can be more like a smart robot, or like my perfect chauffeur. When I was coughing and sniffing, and my driver tried to adjust the temperature. When the sunshine hit my face, he put the the sunshade cover in front of me. So this kind of the smart behavior by car is really coming, and that's the car intelligence. Electrification in the other side is when we look at each nation's U.S. Japan, same thing. We are probably reaching the very kind of stringent, the severe fuel economy level soon. And the data saying before 2020, we are going to reach the limitation of currently internal combustion engine capability. That means go beyond that one. We need some assist from electric motor or some kind of other system of motor assist to the existing conventional internal combustion engine. And then that lead to your pure electric vehicle, battery EV, as Nissan introduced 2 years ago, the Leaf. And that's a pure zero emission vehicle is I would say ultimate solution. But we still have a long way to go. But anyway, sooner or later or before long, we have to admit this kind of pure electrification is coming. That's the message. And so from that sense, we have a lot of the challenges to do this end. But I would say, the support by government, support of many the local the cities or whatever is really helpful for us. But when we look at this kind of the support, we have two different kinds or maybe three different kinds of support. Upstream is a really scientific support. Or maybe this is a more, I would say, subsidy for the research, or subsidy or incentive for some kind of a tax benefit for that the research. But this is a really help. But this is not good enough, probably. When we look at the downstream, this market creation is also very, very necessary. When we look at some of the battery, the venture business in the U.S., we have many the small battery company were existing, but unfortunately, none of them are so successful so far. Reason is their battery is so good, but actually we don't have the big market at the end of this pipeline. Create this kind of not big market, very attractive market is really the necessary to motivate upstream kind of research. So not only focusing on this research area, but also this the market creation at the end is also very important. Now is the volume seller of the EV is only Nissan and Mitsubishi, two car companies only. Others are very small volume. Those are not attractive for those kind of the ventures probably. In order to sustain their growth, we need to create the big market. I think this is my kind of a very simple message. But anyway, thank you.
Thank you very much. Obviously, we could have built a whole program around any one of these gentlemen and the topics that they're putting forward. But it does help when you see all the different perspectives and the role of government and academia and research and the end product and the private sector, how it is all interconnected. I want to turn it open to the floor for questions and comments. Before I do that, one question I'd really like to ask, because it stems from this idea of the importance of federally funded, government-funded research, and the desire to let that run its course without any particular timeline or without any particular deadline or end product in mind from the beginning. And as someone who used to work at a foundation giving grants to different organizations to do research projects, the trend is certainly more toward results-oriented. The board members want to know what's being done with our money, and certainly in our government situation, having limited funding, the taxpayers want to know what they're getting for their money, and we're having smaller amounts of money being invested, from what I can tell, both in Japan and the United States, in basic research, and the trend seems to be putting the money behind a smaller number of high priorities. So rather than spreading it out amongst a wide range of different bets, there's a little bit more targeted or narrow funding in particular areas. Perhaps this relates to Dr. Vest's idea of use-inspired research. But I wonder what your perspectives are, and I open it up to anyone who'd like to answer. If the government has less to spend and invest in basic research, is it better to try to identify a few small number of priorities and really concentrate funding there, or just give a little bit less amongst the existing or a wider range of different types of areas?
Yes, it's a very important discussion there. I think we have no answers to your questions. Anyway, in Japan, we have a number of funding agencies. I think this is a strong feature of Japanese funding system. Each funding agency has a different policy. But anyway, for instance, JSPS is supporting curiosity-driven research, small amount of money and big amount of money. JST is mainly focused on strategic basic research and also science academia collaboration. NEDO is more focused on industrialization. So the diversity or focus, they have different policies. And I think that's good. But remember that as John has just mentioned, very game-changing new technology comes when we do not expect. For instance, the Professor Yamanaka again, who joined our strategic basic research program called CREST, with a program officer, former Chancellor Kishimoto of the Osaka University. His research area was immunology. But when he met Yamanaka-san, Yamanaka-san proposed regenerative medicine with his idea. And so Kishimoto-sensei changed his mind and make investment. That made Nobel Prize. So it's very, very difficult to say this is good or this is bad investment. So the balancing and see who are you are, what you are, what you have. So this is, I think, the last answer to your question.
Thank you. Keith?
I think that I agree. I think that we need to maintain this blend. Actually, in the United States, there are many federal agencies that fund research, even on the biological side where I know. I think last time I counted up, John probably knows this better. John Holdren probably knows this number better than I, but there are over 20 federal agencies that are funding some form of life sciences research. Each of them, except for the National Science Foundation, has a specific, a large set of goals in mind, but within those, each also supports fundamental curiosity-driven discovery. Maintaining that discovery is absolutely essential. Maintaining that philosophy of fundamental discovery is absolutely essential, and really just admits that there's still a lot more that we don't know than what we do know. And that is going to be essential. It's also the case, though, that the enunciation of grand challenges, that within them not only allow but promote, encourage, and enable fundamental discovery to be made, has a certain place, I think, in today's world. We are facing a set of challenges in our world that are going to require a substantial focus. We need to double food production somehow. If our planet's going to grow to 9 billion people, we need to somehow double food production in the next 30 to 40 years. There's really technologically no way for us to do that right now. If we did it by growing all the food in the most fertile areas of the planet and then using gasoline to ship it around to the people that don't have such fertile territory, then our environment will be destroyed and we will fail at that level. So the problems are not only urgent and large, but they need to be solved in integrated ways. And so enunciation of grand challenges that are at a scope and scale that they don't constrain research, but rather kind of tickle the imaginations of investigators to be able to carry out tasks that, at the point of enunciation, cannot actually be met. Those enunciation of challenges at that level can actually promote basic discovery. And enable. And some of the things that the OSTP has been doing recently in their Grand Challenge initiatives and what they have done to work with the Obama administration to generate the new BRAIN initiative. We'll see how that is just beginning to take form. We'll see how that plays out, but at least has the potential for being able to promote and stimulate imagination, for curiosity, new ideas that can also move in a particular direction when aggregated.
Oh, thank you. Oh,
I'd just add one little dimension to this, because I agree with all that's been said, particularly the fact that we must have part of our portfolio that allows the brightest, most creative people to go off and think about what they want to think about. But having said that, when it comes to more strategic approaches, I think, to use an American saying, the devil is in the details. If it is centrally planned how you're going to get to the end, you'll mess it up almost every time. If you want the private sector to solve a problem, you have to give them the rules of the road. And then you have to sustain and stick with those rules of the road, because that's what the private sector does. They optimize within the rules they're given. In a somewhat broader segment of undertaking, John Holdren mentioned incentive prizes this morning. This is a really clever thing, but you don't plan anything. You say, here's what you have to accomplish and unleash the creativity. And then in areas that do require more detailed, more discipline, some level of planning, and Keith, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but David Baltimore once explained to me that most of the life science community was very upset when the government originally decided to put so much money into AIDS research. But at the end of the day, they solved so many fundamental problems on the way to trying to understand that one disease, because nobody said you have to do it exactly this way, that in the end the system worked.
Well, I'd like to, we don't have a lot of time left, but I'd like to open it up to questions. Glenn? And before you ask your question, please identify yourself and ask your question.
I'm Glenn Fukushima with the Center for American Progress. I have a question for Dr. Vest and Dr. Yamamoto. And the question is this. What are the most promising areas for potential future collaboration between Japan and the United States? The reason I ask that question is I was in Japan for the last 20 years working in several companies, especially in high tech. And I must say I've become increasingly pessimistic about the prospects for Japan effectively collaborating with the United States. Part of it has to do with the areas that Dr. Yamamoto mentioned, integration of disciplines, of stakeholders, of globalization, also training and education. And, you know, just some very simple statistics about Japanese students in the United States used to be 47,000 in 1997, down to 19,000 in 2011. The TOEFL scores in Japan being number 28 out of 30 among Asian countries. I was on the board of a research center for advanced science and technology at a major Japanese university until last year. I was shocked to find that out of 100 professors and associates at that institution, only one was from outside of Japan. In my 3 years on the board, it increased to 3. But I had expected that for a research center for advanced science and technology, they would have at least 30 or 40% non-Japanese. And of the 100 or so, only 3 had advanced degrees from outside of Japan. So I find it very difficult to collaborate effectively if Japan is becoming so insular. So that's why I asked the question, what are the areas where you believe that there's most potential for collaboration? Because it seems to me that the possibilities for the United States to collaborate with other countries has gotten so much greater. And so I'm really concerned about Japan's ability to collaborate.
Very quickly, I'm always an optimist. I think your reasons are good reasons to be pessimistic. I have some involvement through the academies with a meeting that occurs every couple of years where we bring together young engineers from Japan and from the U.S. to talk about cutting-edge stuff. And even in the 6 years that I've been here, I've watched the nature of those young Japanese engineers change dramatically. They used to just sit and listen. And now they're outdoing the Americans in jumping in and getting at things. So first, I'd look to the younger generation. Secondly, historically, this country, as you well know, in the 80s, because it had a lot to do with why this joint forum was formed, was totally paranoid that Japan would steal all of our intellectual property and our technology and commercialize it and run over us. At the end of a decade or two of this, we learned more from Japan about how to manufacture things and how to run our quality levels up than they ever got out of our technology. So I think there are some backgrounds. And finally, just to throw an example out, the reason I think the sort of broad area of sustainability is a very interesting place to begin is that Japan's governmental and public attitude for many years toward things like aging society, sustainability, and so forth has been very different than the broad American point of view. I think we can learn from each other. Then you can bring some American pragmatism into solving problems. And then finally, and I mean this very seriously, because of Japan's modest size, its sort of geographic isolation in terms of access to resources and so forth, there's just a whole lot to do that we bring different things to the table. So I'd look to an area like that.
Sure. Yamamoto-sensei, would you like to?
Oh, looking at me. Sorry. Wrong Yamamoto. You raise really good points, but I would start by going back to what Chuck said at the end of his initial remarks, which is that if both partners don't need each other, the partnership won't work, and then remind us all that science works best when scientists can openly use their imaginations. That making decisions from the top about what it is that the scientists will work on will probably also fail. And so then what does that leave us with? And I would suggest a model, maybe an experiment, which would be to bring together a cohort of scientists and engineers from each country and sort of lock them in a room. And we could begin by framing some high-level questions, but maybe not. Instead, just allow them to spend time together to try to begin with a kind of a brainstorming session, and then refine the brainstorming to a set of problems in which both sides feel that there will be advantages in working together. I think that, so we've recently carried out such an experiment with students from UCSF and from Beijing University, where we pulled together a group, I think it was 25 students, Wendell Lim from UCSF and Chao Tang, who migrated from UCSF to Beijing. And they pulled together a set of, I think, 25 students and postdoctoral trainees in the biomedical sciences, and just brought them together. And they spent a week together. And from that generated a set of problems where both sides feel firmly that we could make advances in those areas that neither side could do by themselves. And I'll bet that that idea is scalable. That a group of science and technologists coming together from the U.S. and Japan, and simply given the open-ended charge of coming up with some things in which cooperation could really benefit both sides, we would come up with some great things.
I wonder if that's why the Maui project does so well, because it brings people together in Maui. Nakamoto Sensei, do you have a quick comment?
Thank you. A very quick answer. I'm not also the pessimistic. As far as the advanced science, leading edge science, the United States is of course #1 country in the world. And from Japan, we'd like to collaborate more in this area. But also in the area of global challenges, I think we don't have to go bilaterally. We would like to propose multilateral approaches, including other countries like East Asian countries, United States, Japan work together in this country or in East Asia or in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. Takeda Sensei, did you want to say? No.
Thank you. Actually, thank you every panelist. That's we have I have so much interest about your presentations.
Could you let us know who you are, Sensei? I'm
yeah,
not sure everybody knows.
My name is Takeda, and I'm a one-day advisor to Minister of Education. And I'm a professor of Kyoto University. But also, I'm a dreamer. And actually, nearly 40 years that I'm working between the U.S. and Japan. And for science, starting from nuclear, Jessica, she left, but we work for nucleus and energy and environment. And we believe in, or many Japanese and as well as the U.S. people believe in how important working together. Particularly, the many good people already point out time is a paradigm shift. We are entirely moving, and we do need new dynamism. And so that it's a good reason why U.S. and Japan restart and talking again. And then my quick question is two. One is what's the best mechanism keeping those things on and on? U.S. Japan, STI, and E. E is my second question because I do think that education is the most going to global at the time of paradigm shift. So that's like two quick questions. What's the best mechanism? John is here, and Minister Yamamoto is here, so that's they can discuss and they can decide. But I'd like to hear your opinion, panelists.
Can I? Yeah.
Sure, please. And unfortunately, we're obviously running short of time, and we have some comments from. Right. We have some closing comments from Dr. Holdren, and he has another appointment. But if for very brief response, if you'd like, and then we can talk afterwards.
I understand very important, but from industry viewpoint, it's almost impossible to collaborate with between car companies. This is the history. But what kind of mechanism can encourage you, academia, or the upstream, the parties can collaborate? I cannot understand that what the mechanism is a motivation for that the collaboration. I understand the balance is very important, but what kind of balance we can create? That's a really basic question from our very competitive, the side of the world.
Absolutely, and. So we will continue this conversation afterwards. Yamamoto Sensei, did you want to say anything? Please. We've already run out of time, but extremely briefly. Sure.
Yesterday evening and
Why don't you come up here?
Yeah.
So yesterday evening and today morning, I discussed the importance of basic research with Dr. Holdren, and the balance between basic research and issue-oriented research. Our conclusion is that there's no answer to the question. Which project to be funded? No answer. There's no answer which satisfies everybody. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Abe intends to make the best of our high-level science and technology to contribute to producing economic growth. And as a minister in charge of science and technology policy, I will pursue, or maybe I should say, I will put more focus on the exit strategy, aiming to create new market and to solve societal issue. Dr. Nakamura insisted upon the importance of basic research, and at the same time, as Mr. As Yamashita-san said, Mr. Dr. Nakamura said, there's a shift from long-term R&D to short-term R&D, and it is necessary to strengthen the international network to share the cost of long-term R&D. Yeah, right. And I'm just wondering how we could do that, as Yamashita-san said. We should collaborate, of course, and we are collaborating, but also we are competing each other. So I'd like to know the details of what you mean when you say we need a collaboration to how shall I say, strengthen the needs of basic research. I believe there is a topic that I will have to deal with when I have to formulate what is called comprehensive STI policy strategy by the end of maybe this July. So I really have to know what you are, thinking about. Thank you.
I'm looking because I'm not sure how much time we have to address that answer. No. But I'm so glad, because obviously what we need to do is have a couple of our panelists come back for a follow-on session and dive into each one of some of these issues in greater detail, and then we'll send you the video of the session with all the details by July. So, with apologies to cut the conversation a little short, I would like to give Dr. Holdren a chance to close the meeting, and then if our panelists can stay for a couple of minutes, we'll have a chance to meet some of the audience and talk.
Well, thank you. Very quickly, and it is impossible to summarize such a rich conversation, let me just add a few comments. The first on a further point on the importance of fundamental research. The second, a comment on the necessity of failure. And the third, areas that are promising for continuing and expanding U.S.-Japanese cooperation in science and technology. On the importance of fundamental research, I just want to note that the suggestion has surfaced again in the United States, as it does from time to time, that the taxpayers should only fund research that can be confidently predicted to bring concrete benefits to society. This is sometimes even more narrowly framed, as in the Coburn Amendment to the recent Budget Continuing Resolution, which requires that the National Science Foundation director certify that any grants that NSF makes must benefit either the economy or national security. It's not clear to me whether the proposers of these kinds of ideas even realize that they are proposing to end taxpayer support for basic research. It is in the character of basic research that specific beneficial outcomes to society cannot be confidently predicted. And yet to end taxpayer support for basic research, when we know the private sector will not fill that particular gap for obvious reasons, to end it is to end the expansion of the base of fundamental knowledge on which all future applied advances must draw. This is fundamentally counterproductive. Second point I want to make is on the necessity of failure, and it's a related point. It is precisely in the character of research, applied as well as basic, that positive outcomes cannot be guaranteed in advance. If you are running a research portfolio and there is not some significant percentage of failure in its projects, you are not trying sufficiently ambitious research. And the idea that when there's a failure, political opponents should pounce on it as a catastrophic wastage of the taxpayers' funds, again, is perverse and dangerous. Because if we persuade people that the only research worth funding is research that always comes out with a positive result, we will turn our research enterprise into the pedestrian pursuit of minor advances. Transformative research will be out the window. Third point, just on areas of cooperation, I will mention some areas that from my own experience are flourishing in U.S.-Japanese cooperation and should continue to. High energy physics, space technology, climate change mitigation and adaptation, sustainable agriculture, nuclear safety, and nuclear materials management. One could make a longer list, but I think our cooperation is flourishing and will continue to flourish. There are always obstacles, there are always challenges, but the opportunities to work together to achieve more are going to remain large and irresistible. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, I would just like to thank you all for coming today and being a part of this. We will certainly continue this conversation, and my thanks to the panelists for coming together and sharing their experiences with us. Thank you very much.